What's up guys, hope you are having a great day, and in this video I want to talk about how to declare variables in JavaScript. A variable can be seen as a container which holds reusable data. So let's say that you have a specific name that you need to use multiple times inside your application. Instead of writing down Dari every single time, so let's say Dari, Dari again, in a console log, you can assign it to a variable and use a variable name every single time instead of writing down the full name. So let me get rid of the names. And there are three ways how you could declare a variable. Let me add a comment. The first one is the var keyword. The second one is a keyword let. And the last one is the keyword const. Now, let and const has been old ways to declare variables. I will actually show you how they work in this video, but I will mainly focus on the var method. Before we start declaring our variables, I want to quickly talk about the naming convention of variables, because there are a couple of rules that you need to keep in mind. So let me add a comment, naming conventions. You should not use any of the JavaScript reserved keywords. So let's say that we do not use any JS reserved keywords. Think about console or the var, let, and const variables. You cannot start your variable name with a number, so you cannot use 0 to 9. So you always need to start with a letter or underscore. Always start with a letter and underscore. You also need to be aware that variables are case sensitive. So let's say that they are case sensitive. And what I mean with that is that name is not equal to name. So you always need to be aware that capital N of name is a different variable than name with a lowercase. What I recommend you to do is to use camel case, because if you have multiple words, so let's say you have first name, I always recommend you to start every second word, third word with a capital letter. So first name. So always leave the first letter to lowercase. Every word that is following after the first word needs to be with a capital. I will be using camel case because that is what I prefer to do. But if you like to work with an underscore, so let's say that you want to say that first underscore name, feel free to use it because the output will be the same. We also have Pascal case, which means that the first letter and every other first letter of a word needs to start with a capital, so it would be first name. But I don't recommend using that for variables. But later on with object-oriented programming, when you're going to create classes and stuff, I do recommend you to use Pascal case. So what I want to do right now is to declare variables. And the way we declare a variable is simply by writing down the keyword var space, and you can see that the color is changing to blue, followed by the name of the variable that we want to give. In my case, I want to say var name. If you want to set the value of name equal to something, we need to hit space, equal sign, followed by a set of single quotes and a semicolon, because we want to set a string equal to name. Inside our single quotes, let's write down my name, Dari, and this could also be double quotes, but it's more a preference thing, so you could use whatever you like to use. On the line below, we need to do something with our name, because if I save it right now, nothing is being outputted on the screen. So what we need to do is to create a console.log, and inside our parentheses, we can add our variable called name. So let's save it, and you can see that Dari has been printed out on the screen. A good thing to remember is that the value that we're storing inside is a string, and this can be changed during program execution. And what I mean with that is that if we go below our console log, write down name and set it equal to a new name, so let's say Steve, create a new console.log, and let's, pass in name again, save it. You can see that Steve has overridden the first name of Dari, and Steve has been printed out. You can also see that we're not adding the keyword var right in front of name, And the reason why is because we have already told the application that we have a var called name. So name has already been declared as a variable. What we could do is to, well, create a new variable without values. So let's say we want a var job and we just close it off with a semicolon. And what we're doing right here is initializing a variable. So we're basically storing a variable inside our JavaScript and memory with a name called job. And if we console.log it, you can see that the value is undefined because it's empty. And what we could do later on, so right after our console log, is to say that job is equal to JavaScript developer. And if we console log it, the output is JavaScript developer because it has overridden the undefined. What I want to do right now is to focus on the let variable, and this works pretty much the same as the var. So let's say that we want to say let new name equal to single quotes John. Let's console.log it to see the output of new name. And well, John has been printed out the same way as Dari and Steve. The next variable, which is the last one, is the const. And you need to remember that when you're working with constants, it's a little bit different because it won't change during program execution. What you have seen with the let and the var is that you can redeclare the variable name. And you cannot do that with constants. So let's create a const called car, and let's set it equal to single quotes Mercedes. If we console log the car, you can see that the output is Mercedes and everything is going according plan. But if we go right below our console log, there are a couple things that you do need to remember. The first thing is that you always need to assign it to a value. So let's say that we need to have to assign it to a value. Let's say that we want the new const called phone, and we want to close it off with the semicolon. If we console.log our phone, we will get an error message because it's not possible to set the value equal to nothing. Another annoying thing about constants is that you cannot reassign the value. So we have a constant called car. Let's get rid of const phone. Let's say that we want to set car equal to Audi. Let's replace phone with car in the console log. And you can see that we're getting a type error because you are only allowed to read constants and you cannot redeclare them. A pretty confusing but cool thing about JavaScript is that we have the ability to set our constant equal to multiple values. So let's get rid of our car Audi. Let's create a new constant called person, and let's set it equal to opening and closing curly braces. We also need to end our curly braces with a semicolon, but inside our opening and closing curly braces, we could say that the name of the person is equal to single quotes John, after the closing single quote, comma, and John has an age of 30. If we console log person right now, you can see that the list has been printed out. And what we could do is to change the name of one specific value. So outside of our const, we could say that we want to change person.name equal to Johnny instead of John. Save it, and you can see that John has been replaced with Johnny in the console log. This was it for this video about what variables are in JavaScript. If you do enjoy my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.